Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's the 4th of April 2013 and it's just gone 1:13. Myself, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth as always. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon. Well, we've made it again, finally.
Thursday drama.
Yeah.
What's the weather doing, Brian?
Well, it was very nice this morning, lots of bright sunshine in Plymouth, England, but the cloud has come in quite heavily now, so it's overcast, a cold northeasterly wind, temperature around about 4.5 degrees. For those overseas and in America in particular, I think that's about 42 degrees Fahrenheit, but I can't be entirely sure. So it's getting a bit gloomy, but we like it that way. So there we are.
Yes, I'm going to start today
With food.
with food.
Yeah.
Apparently, British supermarkets are throwing away approximately £100 billion worth of food a day. And according to Tristan Stewart, who is an author of a book called Waste, Uncovering the Global Food Scandal, we're paying supermarkets and other businesses to trash the planet, to grow food and then waste a third of it. We need to make a demand as consumers that they are changing their behaviour as well. This comes the wake of obviously the food packages as well being handed out across the country by various charities. So yeah, £10 billion worth of food each year.
And this is all a result of the packaging, and it's got to be perfect in the supermarkets.
Exactly.
We've got individual families like Tesco's controlling billions of our food.
Yeah.
And if it isn't the right
And I
shape.
think this is also showing a push towards the GM stuff as well.
Yeah, if the bananas aren't straight enough, we've got to throw those away, and the eggs, etc.
Yes.
So this is what happens when we put the nation's food supply in the control of a few corporate families. Big trouble.
Exactly.
We're going to move on quite quickly because we want full time with our guest Kevin Bull, who will be on at about 20 to 2. Meanwhile, we're helping other people.
Yeah, apparently 70% of Pakistani MPs in this country haven't filed tax returns. Pakistan will become the largest recipient of the UK aid next year, and a controversial move given the backdrop of corruption, tax avoidance and political instability, the MPs warned. Some MPs are saying the British aid to Pakistan should be cancelled until the elite Pakistanis in this country start paying their taxes.
Yeah, and of course this hasn't come out of nowhere. This has been known about for a very long period of time. So we're really now beginning to see what Britain is about at the moment. Massive corruption. This is all coming out of our own government. It isn't the result of ordinary people going to work. But we're now beginning to see that we have got this elite who think they're above the law, whether they're from Pakistan or whether they're down the road from Eton or any of the other big schools.
Exactly.
Marlborough, was it, for David Cameron?
Marlborough, yeah.
And talking of elite schools, Mike, I think this one, no?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I mean, George Osborne, George Osborne, of course, is spending more on aid per capita than any other country other than the United States. And really the only point to make here is, why, to ask the question, why is he doing this? Well, of course, this aid money is being used to prosecute Britain's foreign policy abroad by funding various NGOs and other organisations that are implementing the wishes of the British elite and the City of London.
Yeah.
Can't say any more than that, really, can we?
No, it's that simple. We are buying foreign policy. We haven't got any money to spend at home, but if you give it to Mr. Osborne, he's going to use it to get the government's global policy in place.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it? Nasty things turning up for 9/11.
Yeah, apparently there are 2 potential human remains recovered on Monday, according to a medical examiner. Search for remains is still taking place at the Fresh Kills landfill site on Staten Island. Obviously, almost 3,000 people died on 9/11 and the World Trade Center attacks, but only apparently 1,600 odd people have been identified. So some remains found at the landfill where some of the debris was taken. Where all the the amount of rubble from those towers went, we do not know. They just seem to turn to dust and disappear.
We know all the steel was rapidly shipped off to China, but what this article did say is that many people were still raising their concerns
Yeah.
at the speed at which the evidence of the Twin Towers was dug up and shipped out.
I must recommend for viewers and listeners Dr. Judy Wood, Where Did the Towers Go? Very, very interesting insight into it all.
And also, ex-police intelligence analyst Tony Farrell has also got a new video up, which you should be able to find quite easily on YouTube, in which he is talking about a number of the terrorist attacks and saying that the evidence as put out by mainstream politicians, be it in Britain or America, simply does not stack up. We are still not being told the truth about what actually happened with the Twin Towers. For the sake of all the victims associated with that terrible event, we need to get the truth out.
Absolutely, 100%.
And a little bit more scaremongering,
A little bit
I
of
think this
scaremongering.
is.
I think this is going to be another new vaccine drive coming up ahead. Apparently, there have been 9 reported cases of a new strain of bird flu in eastern China, and that is being known as H7N9. It's killed 2 men in Shanghai. Additional reports of the disease have emerged in other parts of China, and the World Health Organization is monitoring the cases and are waiting to see if it's going to become a pandemic. So, vaccine alert ahead, I feel.
Yeah,
On its way. It's just more fear,
scaremongering to try and get people to take more vaccines.
I think so.
Which is something. I had the pleasure of being in a hospital a couple of days ago, accompanying somebody, and was very intrigued to see on the wall a poster saying, basically vaccines are the key to a healthy life. And
I've actually got a picture which we should have brought on today of at the back of a glossy magazine, where they're saying the best present for Mother's Day to give your mum is to get the HPV Gardasil vaccine for cervical cancer. And it was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. I'll put it on the UK Column Facebook page later on.
Yeah. So the massive drive to get people vaccinated.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is a nasty little story.
It's a bit scary, isn't
if people really think about what's going on here.
Yep. This lady, her name is Paris Brown. She's 16. She's from Maidstone in Kent, and she's going to be paid £15,000 a year by Kent, by Kent County Council, because she is now the official youth police of Kent. She's the crime commissioner, and she's 16. She's just left school. She beat off 160 applicants, and she's vowed to change the perception of young people. And she left school last year with 6 GCSEs, and she's putting her university plans on hold because she is now the new Youth Commissioner of Police for Kent.
Yeah, so
Hitler Youth?
It's almost Hitler. It's certainly Stasi. We're now drawing young people in who are going to be used by the establishment to report, to get in amongst their peers. And it's very significant. She's talking about changing perceptions. Changing the behaviour. At 16, she still will not know what reality is. She certainly won't know of what the truth is going on. She's going to believe everything that's fed her. And then what is she going to be doing? Changing the perception.
Exactly, of young people.
Perceptions of her peers. When we have Kevin Ball with us a little bit later, we're going to be talking about changing perceptions and behaviour within the NHS. And this, to me, seems a parallel programme for what we're seeing with the police. So we've got the situation in Scotland now with one massive police force under the control of 2 individuals, 17,500 officers. Now, south of the border, we've got the police being controlled by so-called new police commissioners on massive salaries, and they're already bringing their friends in. And now we're dragging in young people who, being as polite as possible to this young lady. I'm sure her heart's in the right place, but she has not got the experience or the wisdom to know whether she's being fed the right stuff.
Exactly, and then she's going to be influencing our younger generation.
Yeah. Well, we're jumping around a bit today. People thinking. We're over to
America actually. This is basically what's happening now over in America, that researchers discovered that Fukushima nuclear disaster has had a far-reaching effect than what was being reported. I mean, this was on Natural News and various other shows and websites. They were warning about what could happen, and we were all told that America was going to be perfectly safe. They wouldn't be hit by any nuclear fallout over there, and well, they have. Apparently, a few days after Fukushima, the levels of radiation went up in California, Hawaii, Alaska, Oregon. They were up 211 times above the normal level. But now hypothyroid cases have now skyrocketed.
Rocketed.
And, yeah, I can't get my words out today. And 16%, an average of 16% they've been increasing from March to December. And it's really hitting America hard now. There's newborns getting hit with thyroid problems.
Yeah, well, I remember when Chernobyl happened, all of the nuclear warning alarms went off in the naval dockyard in Plymouth here in England, and it was certainly true that fallout appeared here.
They need to get
quickly.
some Lugos iodine, ancient purity, for that radiation.
Absolutely. And we've got our interesting friend Ian Duncan Smith. I think this was an update on the number of people who'd actually...
I think this is Mike's.
No, well, I put it in.
Oh,
I'm
you put
afraid
it in? Yeah, well, I've
I
signed the
had to put it
petition.
in.
Mike signed the petition. Have you signed the petition?
Not yet, but I will do.
And what are the levels up to?
Well, there's only 90,000 people shy of 500,000. So what is that? About 410, 420,000 people so far.
Yeah.
And I think the goal that they're aiming for is 500,000. So it's not too far to go.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to give this man a personal mention because I had the dubious pleasure of meeting him in his constituency office several years ago. He was awake, but he appeared to be asleep, if I could describe it like that. And in fact, the best talk I had was with his PA, a gentleman who was acting as his PA for the day. And that gentleman, if I remember correctly, was a councillor. I think the constituency is Tring, but perhaps people will correct me if my memory's not quite right on that. But what was extraordinary was that I don't think there was anything there with this man. You know, the hamster wheel was turning, but the hamster wasn't at home. And this man is so arrogant that he dismisses what Mike's just said, just short of 500,000 people. Their views is just a stunt.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable arrogance.
Absolutely.
And for this man to suggest he was ever suffering the sorts of poverty that many people in this country are, he's now in a privileged position. He's surrounded
He just
by...
needs to try it for a week. Just do it for a week. That's all he needs to do.
You know, let's deal with the man. He's there spouting to the nation, talking about how people should or shouldn't receive benefits. His colleagues, we've got criminals, expense fiddlers, paedophiles. This man is a typical example of the elite. He's believing his own reality. And he said he drove a lorry after he was in the army, perhaps with no disrespect to lorry drivers, but perhaps you should go back out on the road, Mr. Ian Duncan Smith, and see whether you can get a dose of reality. I'll leave it there because I'll probably get a bit stormy if I continue.
I don't want that now.
Well, the Tories are going to go for it, restricting child benefit.
David Davis, he's told The Times apparently that there's a strong argument to restrict benefit when people have more than 2 children. And they're using this Mark Philpott case as to that's the reason why, apparently, because he received $8,000 a year in child benefit. IDS, Ian Duncan Smith, last year questioned whether it was acceptable that families on benefits should continue to receive endless amounts of money for every child they have. It was disclosed also earlier this year that the government is handing child benefit and tax credits to the parents of more than 40,000 foreign children, costing the Treasury about £55 million.
So they've created the problem with Labour, of course. The whole problem has been created. This culture has been created. And now, having created it, we're now going to turn the screws and accuse all these people of being sponges. And of course, if you're in work and paying higher taxes, then you're going to start to get angry at these people.
Exactly.
So this is classic, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution.
Yep.
So let's see through it and let's start really pointing the finger at our politicians who are the liars and cheats and traitors causing this problem in the first place.
Yep.
And there's a bit more of it here. This is very sinister, I think,
I
this
think
London
this is really sinister.
Evening Standard article.
They're moving, the council are considering moving homeless families to Margate, which is one of the country's economic black spots. The news has been triggered concerns that it's a faded seaside town which already has a large number of children in care, which is interesting. And it could increase demand for more social services down there. Its Lambeth Council said it was exploring offering some homes and flats in Margate on a temporary basis to people who needed somewhere to live. The council has insisted the plan was not about saving money by using cheaper accommodation outside the capital, and was unrelated to the government's introduction of a £400 a week cap on housing benefit.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
Either.
And of course, the other thing we need to remember is that the BBC has already been talking about whether London should stay our capital city. We know that in many areas of London, down and out destitute people, including many ex-military people, are simply being lifted and shifted so that they don't disgrace the streets. So they're being pushed out of the capital. What is going to become a city region for the European elite. And who's just moved here from France? His name escapes me at the moment, with his girlfriend. He'll come back to me in a minute.
Okay.
And of course, we've got the Russian billionaire
Yes.
elites moving in. Meanwhile, these people are going to be shipped out.
Out of London.
Yeah,
Well, it's the same as those Olympic lanes, isn't it? And we said they're going to be there for a purpose. So you got for the elite lanes.
The elite
so
lanes.
we're getting the rough out of London as such,
Yeah.
and keep the elite in London, and they can drive around their elite lanes.
It's got a little bit of Nazi Germany coming
so.
in, and we'll talk about that. And of course, the euro's not helping the matter, is it, Mike?
Well, this is a blog post by Lars Christensen, the co-founder of Saxo Bank, and he's saying the real problem is not Cyprus, it's the euro. And he says quite a lot about it. After a few disturbing weeks, I would like to wrap up my comments on Cyprus and hopefully turn to other issues going forward. It's astonishing that a €10 billion bailout can keep the world spellbound for so long. It's astonishing that this bailout can keep the world spellbound, he thinks. And he goes on basically to say at the end, for sure, a lot of financial institutions took advantage of the hands they were dealt. So he's referring to the casino culture. They are not without guilt and responsibility for the current mess, but the real problems lie not in the people trying to take advantage of whatever conditions they operate under. The real problem lies in the framework that is created by politicians, preventing free markets to deal with excesses in the way capitalism always does. And he then goes on to say, Cyprus is a very good example of this. The problem is not Cyprus, the problem is the euro. So it's what he's really saying is nothing to do with the bankers, guys. Everything to do with the politicians. In fact, it's to do with both.
Yeah,
It's absolutely both.
Do you think he doesn't see it? Is this man not bright enough to see it, or is he sucked in by the propaganda?
No, he is a banker, so he doesn't
right.
want to take. He is the chief executive of Saxo Bank.
Right.
He doesn't want to take responsibility for what the banking community has done. He wants to divert attention away from the banking community and onto the politicians. It doesn't. It's like The fact of the matter is, if you look at what happened with MPs' expenses, for example, MPs were told to claim these expenses, but rather than falling back on some kind of personal morality, they just accepted the framework provided by the expenses committees, and he's basically making the same excuse. I'm sorry, if you break the law, you break the law, and that's the end of the story, no matter whether the framework that's put in place permits you to break the law.
Yeah, credible.
And yesterday we talked about the New Zealand Central Bank's document, and we're going to look at it again in a second regarding the whole bail-in notion, the notion which is exactly what has happened in Cyprus. And the point I was making yesterday is that it's not just Cyprus, and so anybody questioning whether this is a precedent that's been set, the answer to that question is pretty self-evident. Well, actually, other people have been talking about this as well, and this is Ellen Brown from a couple of days ago, and so we'll just look at the the Open Bank Resolution, which is the New Zealand one, and the first highlight here is basically pointing out that this document is saying that they're already implementing this. So this was produced in 2011, and if we look at the next one, just pointing out here that it is a Reserve Bank of New Zealand document. And the point that they were making was what happens when a bank fails and what's the procedure that's followed. And this diagram is the first diagram that explains that. Basically, it begins with accounts being frozen because, of course, customers of the bank are considered unsecured creditors. And so, although the shareholders' funds go first, those of us who are unsecured creditors, i.e. we have a savings account or a current account with mainly savings, obviously, they will be hit next. And so what Ellen Brown was pointing out, that it's not just New Zealand. Here we've got the Canadian, very colourful and bright website that the Canadian government has set up with their 2013 budget. And they produced a document out of that called the Economic Action Plan 2013. And if we just have a look at a particular section of that, it says the government proposes to implement a bail-in regime for systematically important banks. This regime will be designed to ensure that in the unlikely event that a systematically important bank depletes its capital, the bank can be recapitalized and returned to viability through the very rapid conversion of certain bank liabilities into regulatory capital. This will reduce risks for taxpayers. Well, they're stealing taxpayers' money in order to reduce risks for taxpayers. Whether it's a bail-in, as the Cyprus thing has been called, or a bail-out, where the government bails out the bank and therefore the taxpayer pays, either way the taxpayer pays. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to reduce risks for the taxpayer. In the case of a bail-in, of course, it's only certain taxpayers, because it's only certain taxpayers that have savings in the bank.
Can I just add there, Mike, if I may, when you were talking through this, my mind was saying, isn't this interesting? If you had somebody who's running a normal company and they get into problems, in come the receivers in no time at all the assets stripped away from people and sold off, with mainly the receivers making most money out of it. But if you're a bank, you can break the law, you can steal the money, you can use taxpayers' money.
And you get a bonus for it.
And you get a rescue scheme.
Yeah.
This is a point that I've been making in what the stuff I've been writing for the last 5 or 6 years. One of the things that should have happened back in 2007, 2008 was that the banks should have been put into administration the same way that any other business is put into administration when it goes bankrupt. The banks should have been put into administration, the receiver should have gone in, restructured the debt, decided what was a legitimate debt and what wasn't, and restructured the company. As you point out, this has never happened with banks. It isn't going to happen with banks under the present regime. But it's not just Canada, because if we go on, Ellen Brown also points out that in 2012, the Americans and the British produced a joint document here, a joint paper by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Bank of England. And there's an interesting little paragraph in this as well, where it says an efficient path for returning the sound operations of the GSIFI to private sector would be providing by exchanging or converting a sufficient amount of the unsecured debt from the original creditors of the failed company into equity. So this is exactly the process that's happening in Cyprus at the moment, where the unsecured debt, the unsecured creditor, money's being stolen from them, up to 60, 70, 80% in some cases is being stolen from them, and instead they're being given shares in the bankrupt bank. Right? This is a brilliant deal that they're getting. In the US, the new equity would become capital in one or more newly formed operating entities. In the UK, the same approach could be used, or the equity could be used to recapitalise the failing financial company itself. Thus, the highest layer of surviving bailed-in creditors would become the owners of the resolved firm. Well, you become the owner of the bankrupt institution.
No, it's a resolved firm.
Yes,
a nice little piece of newspeak there.
Yeah,
you're not bankrupt, you're resolved.
So the key point here is that this bail-in strategy is something. Now, Ellen Brown, I believe it was Ellen Brown, was pointing out that she believes that this was something that was decided at a recent G20, but this is clearly a global a global policy that has been decided right across the central banking community and agreed to by our politicians.
Yeah. So this is all preordained, which means that everything that George Osborne's saying at the moment is he's either grossly badly informed or it's a lie. And I think I know which one. And we're on the serious subject of arms here as well.
Well, it's quite interesting. Cameron here's applauding the adoption of the new arms treaty by the United Nations. And basically this is a treaty that was agreed yesterday, I believe, which prohibits the export of weapons if such trade violates arms embargoes or if the weapons could be used in genocide or crimes against humanity. That's what the United Nations is saying.
Sorry, isn't that what's actually going on in Syria with Cameron campaigning to get the arms in there?
Right. So Cameron said in this statement on number 10, this is a landmark agreement that will save lives and ease the intense human suffering caused by armed conflict across the world. It will reduce the number of illegal arms and make it harder for these to reach the hands of criminals and terrorists. I understand.
We're chuckling here, of course.
It's
we're
just-
not laughing at the victims. We're
No,
laughing
you're
at the
just
sheer
gobsmacked.
hypocrisy of it.
It's kind of an ironic laugh, really, isn't it? But
Well, Sam can, of course.
well, it gets better.
Yeah.
We should be proud of the role Britain has played to secure this ambitious agreement,
Yeah.
working with international partners to secure this momentous step that will make our world safer for all. So others, of course, are saying, well, it's all very well having this agreement, but it's the implementation of it, the devil's in the detail, as it were. All kinds of people are thinking this is brilliant. Ban Ki-moon thinks it's brilliant. Amnesty International thinks it's brilliant. But the question is, how will they actually make it effective? I mean, what this enforcement is the issue, and of course what this agreement really is, in my view anyway, is a plan to make sure that only approved arms trades happen.
Yeah.
So no independent arms traders, just the arms traders, the types of arms traders that perhaps support politicians like David Cameron in their
William Hague,
endeavours.
of course. We mustn't forget Willie, because he's been very keen to get the arms into Syria.
There's been a lot of. I listened to the Alex Jones show last night, and there was a lot going on about arms, just for on personal use with their, with the amendment that they're just ex-veterans who've had nothing wrong. They're pulling them all in to give them medicals and any little thing, and then they're just taking the guns off of guys who've never been in trouble before.
Well, you don't want ordinary American citizens to have guns, of course. You only want the people that David Cameron thinks should have the guns to have the guns. It's sheer hypocrisy, but I think there's more to it. These people are in the bunker mentality. They believe their own reality, and we're going to come on to a bit of that with Kevin Bull in a minute. What have you got here?
Right, okay, so, back to economics. We're a bit mixed up today, but just to say, Bank of Japan has decided that they're going to increase their quantitative easing policy. Kind of nuts.
Everybody's at it.
Everybody's
print
at
more money,
yep.
unless it's actually the government.
Except us, it seems. So if we go on to the next one, the Bank of England. This is from this morning, but actually by the time we came on air, the Bank of England had decided to keep quantitative easing unchanged at 375 billion and interest rates staying at 0.5%. Nothing changes. I mean, obviously, the one thing I didn't mention about the bail-in thing from the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, of course, is that Mark Carney, who's presently in charge of the Bank of Canada, is coming to take over from Mervyn King in a couple of months' time. So, that's he's
what goes around comes around. Keep the same people in the loop.
Yeah.
And what's Barclays been up to here?
Well,
they've been avoiding. Well, I can't imagine this is true.
Well, it's staggering, isn't it? Barclays tax avoidance division. So this is the division that helps Barclays customers avoid tax. Generated £1 billion of revenue in the last couple of years, but in the meantime they only paid £82 million in corporation tax. I mean, can you be more arrogant than that? Particularly in light of the next slide, because they've been paying out £170 million a year in bonuses. So they've made sufficient profit to pay out £170 million in bonuses each year, but they only paid £80 million in corporation tax.
Yeah.
This is disgusting.
Well, of course, if you come to the acceptance, which I certainly have, that what's going on is that the banks are simply controlling the politicians to get the policies out that they want. So here in Britain, we can't debate anything to do with the Bank of England on the floor of the House. It's quite apparent that none of our MPs understand what the Bradbury pound was and how we should and can again be issuing our own money. So what we've got is the criminals in the international banking cartel simply running the whole show lock, stock and barrel. And many people, of course, say that the ultimate hold over politicians who are simply going along with this criminal activity on a global scale, the ultimate control is the paedophile networks. If you analyse it on a sort of professional footing, it's becoming more and more clear that what we're dealing with here is international terrorism funded and controlled through the banking system.
Definitely.
And partly financed through the drugs trade from Afghanistan, of course.
Indeed,
Yeah.
but for anybody to say that George Osborne tells the banks what to do, I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's like the 3-year-old
Well, then he
looking
needs
up
to
and-
take responsibility for that last article, then, doesn't he? And step in if that's the case, isn't it?
Well,
That's not
okay,
gonna
perhaps
happen.
but okay, right. But just a couple more slides before we bring in Kevin Bull, who I think is available now, which is excellent. This is a little article that one of our viewers gave us this morning. It's very, very interesting. Basically, Ofsted has closed a school, a preschool, Dunmore Preschool, in the Abingdon area because one of the individuals involved with it has recently been accused of child sex crimes. And what's so interesting about this is Ofsted has gone straight in and closed the school for 6 weeks while there's an investigation and check whether anybody has been harmed. Now,
That's good.
credit where it's
Yeah.
due for that.
Oxford and Cherwell?
Well, this is the thing. So we actually called Ofsted this morning and said, how is it that you've gone into this Oxford school and closed it on the basis that something might have happened, but when you were informed of serious physical and sexual abuse going on at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, you didn't do anything at all? And we hold documents which clearly show that Ofsted didn't get in there to ensure that the right action was taken. Now, what they said to us is that one, they'd come back with a press statement, which I don't think they have so far, but also they pointed out that they have actually got regulatory powers over preschool. So younger
right.
children, they do have direct powers, but when it comes on to schools handling older children, they've got more of an advisory role. So there's a little bit of greyness there. But what we'd like to say is that despite very brave members of staff like this Asian gentleman actually whistleblowing on the serious sexual and physical assault going on at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, including making tens and tens of reports to the police, and despite the fact that there are numerous victims who've made numerous statements and some of them have been traumatised, there has still been no full investigation. And of course the BBC has failed to get involved, so their reporter Nicola Stambridge backed out at the speed of light, having talked to the local authorities who were covering up the abuse in the first place. And we'll just flag up, this is Sally Dickett's, the principal of the college, who so far has failed to ensure that a full and complete investigation has been carried out. This is one of her letters to local MP Andrew Smith MP. Some of it's a bit strange because you can't really understand it, but there's a name. So name attendance has been exceptionally poor and he today made any complaint. Now I'm not sure of the grammatical accuracy of this sentence, but I think there's something wanting. But the point is that the victim that this letter relates to, who suffered just horrific abuse, there still has been no full and detailed investigation into what happened to him, let alone the tens of other students at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. It's a massive cover-up.
Thanks for joining us. Back tomorrow, 1 o'clock, ukcolumn.org. Please tell your friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.